Welcome to Julie Whitney Scott Presents Let's Talk Theater, a Mind for God production sponsored event, heard only on WGRN LP 94.1, the Green Renaissance Station. Let's Talk Theater. Well, I am so excited to have with me today on Let's Talk Theater one of my favorite actresses that I've met and worked with in the past, and that's Mrs. Dawn. Miss Dawn, I first, that's what I want to say to you, that you were an inspiration to me because I didn't start till later and didn't really want to do it. But when I saw other people like you that were seniors, like me and older, that were out there, like still doing it, even though you've aged, it gave me encouragement to like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. So I want to welcome you first to being on my show.
Well, thank you, Julie. And I'm so glad the day we became friends, somewhere between lamps and French fries, from the show we did. And I've followed things on YouTube. I think you are tremendous as well. And us grandmothers have to stick together.
And that is the truth. And thank you so much for your kind words. Miss Dawn, on Let's Talk Theater, one of the things that I would like to do is introduce people to my audience who may have never really talked to you or have seen people on the stage, but didn't really know who that person was or didn't have a way to kind of figure out who are they and why are they doing what they're doing. And I feel that it's so important that we acknowledge the people that have been out there, because there's a lot of people that are in the field here, especially in Central Ohio. And I think that it's important that they have as much acknowledgement as anybody else that would be on Broadway, because we work hard, Miss Dawn, and we've been working hard a long time. So why don't you start off with telling people how did you decide and become into theater? Have you always done this, Miss Dawn?
Oh, we are going way back, about 70 years where it started. Take dance lessons like every other little girl. But we had a very special dance teacher. She is still alive. I still talk with her a couple times a year. She groomed my sister and I. We eventually became a sister act. My sister's 5 years younger. But we started with the dance. I loved the dance. I took everything, the tap, the jazz, the acrobat, the everything, and I loved it. And then when my sister was old enough to join me, we started that, and we had the sister act, as I say, and they had us out performing everywhere, Kiwanis clubs, nursing homes. That's all we did. People would ask in school, well, what'd you do during the week? Did you do this? I said, no, we're out almost every night entertaining. So performance was just, that's what you do. And then we began to do things that had songs with them. So I started the singing, and then I thought, well, I can sing. I sang in church choirs as early as probably 12 years old, and I just never stopped. So the dancing and the singing, and then I guess I was born a ham, and I just didn't know it at the time until we started doing things. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm getting some applause and some, I think people like what I'm doing. So I just felt like not necessarily a triple threat all the time. As I learned in my older years, but I just love being on the stage in some fashion.
You said that when you first started with your sister, how old were you when your sister joined you?
Probably 10 or 11.
And did you guys have a name for you?
No.
You just performed?
No, it was just the sister act. And she would announce it.
Where were you at? Were you here in Columbus?
No,
with this?
Cleveland, Maple Heights, near Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I grew up.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, Miss Dawn, when you decided that you were a ham, you probably were like me. People were, well, maybe not, because you were always doing it. When I decided to finally do it, people were saying things like, well, you were always a ham anyway. So, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, Yeah, so you're acting, it was like normal. Was it difficult? You said 70 years ago. First, let me say you look good. I never would. I thought you was 70. So the fact that
Oh,
you're
I'm way
saying
past 70.
so so you saying 70, that that takes me into asking you, talk to us. 70 years ago, it wasn't too cool for women to think about having a career or anything like that. In theater, because back 70 years ago we were supposed to be in the kitchen cooking, taking care of your family, uh, and that was the most acceptable thing to do back then. Did you have any difficulties? Did you put your life on hold in any type of a way because you come from that type of an era?
No, I didn't even realize that until I really got into it. And my sister and I, bless her heart, she's probably listening when I tell her the link. Um, she doesn't remember a lot of this, um, but I seem to be born 5 years too early. She's 5 years behind me. And the common joke is, um, first thing I wanted to play an instrument in school, and I wanted to play the drums. And my mother says, no, that is not the instrument for a young lady. You can either play the flute or the clarinet. So I played the clarinet all the way through college. And then we went on to my major. Well, can I major in theater or do more than just the music where I was headed? No, no. A young lady needs to have something that she can really earn a living. So you've got a beautiful voice. I think music is where you need to turn. So at Otterbein, they had all these lovely productions and everything. And um, that was one of my first medical conditions, I guess. I was trying to do too much, doing theater, doing instrumental, doing music, everything. I was sent home for about 3 months my freshman year from just sheer exhaustion. And so when I went back, they said, well, right now you need to concentrate and be a music education major. And because you are a music, I don't want you doing anything in theater because it is absolutely going to ruin your voice. And that was kind of the persona for Otterbein, was theater. So I settled that and said, okay. And then another stumbling block, I should say, came in my senior year at Otterbein, between my junior and senior year, and that's where I met my husband, was in the a cappella choir with Richard Chamberlain. We were on tour in York for several weeks, and sometime during that, something had happened. We don't know, there was a sinus infection or what it was, but by the time we had finished the tour, I had no voice. It wasn't like I was hoarse. There was no voice to be had. It had kind of like bore a hole through my cords. Um, and I was up against my student teaching coming up. I was coming up against my senior recital and all of this stuff. And they said, well, do you know, how about sign language? How about using a whiteboard? How about doing this? And at that time, I was a vocal major, instrumental minor, and there was another Don, D-O-N, who was the same. So we did our student teaching together. He was the voice. I could still direct and, do the lessons plans and do everything. So that qualified me for that. And when it came time for the senior recital, my dear Professor Chamberlain fought for me endlessly. And he said, she's an overachiever. She recorded her senior recital in her junior year. I have it on tape. There were people in the room, so it qualified for, having a witness to people saying it. And they qualified me and allowed me to go from there. So all my life, I've just learned to adapt. If plan A doesn't work, you go to plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, you go to plan C. And if they don't think I should be in theater at this age or what age, I just say, watch me.
I am so glad I brought that up, because you talked about a lot of things there, and especially with the instrument. Miss Don, I didn't think about that, but when I wanted to play an instrument, I wanted to play a guitar, and Sure enough, my parents went and got me a clarinet. And and this 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 was 50 years ago. So it from and I never thought about it, but I guess probably by then too, it was still in that realm about there were only certain things that a woman did in regards to entertainment and instruments and things like that. So I'm glad I brought that up because I hadn't even thought about um, the musician piece of it.
Well,
Uh,
the caveat part of that was my sister, as I said, 5 years younger. When she became asking those questions, she played the drums. She majored in theater. So, and I was still playing my silver clarinet. And by the end of high school, I played it in elementary and junior high and high school. Everybody had the wooden clarinets. And I asked, requested, might I? Well, if you stick with it, dear. Now, this has already been 6 years into it. If you stick with it, we will get you your wood. I went all the way through college with that metal clarinet. And the music store uptown Westerville just laughed and laughed every time I had to bring this metal thing in for repair because they said, what is this? But I stuck with it. And my father passed about 5 years ago, bless his heart. And a year or so before that, I finally had the nerve. I said, you know what, Dad? I said, you kind of promised that if I stuck with the clarinet, that you would buy. Oh, my dear, I am so sorry. I totally forgot that. And I said, it's cool. I said, I went all the way through it. I just thought you would get a laugh out of that.
that is funny. It's like it's okay, Dad. I'm not trying to play that right now. Okay. I just thought, just to let you know that I did do it, huh? That's cool. Do you feel that it's been easier as you got older to get more leading roles, more roles, or was it because when actors, especially females, sometimes it's like the men can get older and they just come up with all these wonderful old parts. For males that are seasoned and saged, but for women, it just seems like it's just so hard pulling teeth to find a role that as you get past a certain age that um that you would want to even do, number one, and that still gives the grace and dignity of growing old gracefully. Have you found it to be easier or harder?
Well, I suppose it's harder in the respect that because I was a singer dancer, it was fairly easy. I was young, decent looking, and musicals, were there. And I did musicals for a long time, not really knowing I could do anything serious or drama. But then, as I told you in my preview bio for me, I lost my leg in '79 for the car accident. And over the course of 5 years, they found it. They were able to kind of attach it and all the other places that were broken. I had 5 operations in about 2 years' time and just laid on the couch. And I had this big, huge thing they called the Hoffman device, where they just put posts in your leg and screwed the 2 pieces of the leg together. And so there again, that wasn't going to let me stop me. When I was allowed to get off the couch with that apparatus, I went back to church choir. Of course, I couldn't walk down the aisle, but I would hobble in and when I had that thing taken off, my surgeon said, well, you'll probably never walk again without a walker. And I said, that's okay. I said, but I'm a dancer and I do intend to dance again. And about 2.5 years later, he came out to something I was doing for Pleasure Guild because his wife was on the team. He came backstage and he says, what have you done? I can't believe you're walking, let alone doing this and tapping and dancing. And I said, I've got red hair and you don't keep me down. And they just kind of laughed. You're a tough old bird. So from there, I having been out of theater for about 6 years, I think my first thing back was curtain players. I think I played Rosemary in Picnic. And that was and then I thought, hey, I can still do this. And look at all these theaters that have come into the fold since that happened. And I just started, going around. I teased Bill Goldsmith a lot because it took me probably 3 years to get accepted into one of his shows. And I had done a lot of theater, but I wasn't known to him. And that's a lot of directors, they want to work with people they worked with. Well, once I did a show for him, I went on to do years and probably 15 other shows past that. And I found, to your question, that is the key. Even as an older actress, if someone has worked with you before at any age and feels comfortable that you will do a good job, then, oh, okay, well, I think maybe Dawn could do this, or, oh, yes, I've heard about Dawn, or yes, I know. But because my leg is getting incapacitated a little bit more as I age, it lasted 20 years longer than it should have. I can't do as many musicals. And if I'm auditioning for one, I put that caveat on there. I've got 25 years of dance training. I can move, but this is the situation. I can no longer. So for Weathervane, I have managed over the past 20 years to do 5 shows where I had a little tap solo in that, because they knew I could do it. I couldn't do more than about 38 bars, but I could do it. And now that I can't do that much, I'm doing a lot more dramas. Of course, the last one I did, as you know, was for JB3 with Agnes of God. Thrilled to do that. It's a role I've always wanted to play. And a week before we opened, of course, then I broke my wrist. So there we go to a plan B again. And the cast was so gracious to wait. So 3 months later, we finally did it. But I was willing to not have them operate until the show was over, because I knew I could always hide it under my habit. But they said, no, you need to get this operation and we will wait. So I was terribly indebted for that. And I've performed at a lot of theaters around here, and I love them all. I just love theater, period.
See, Miss Dawn, that's what I was saying about you. You're just an encouragement. There are so many people out there that would have such a tragic accident happen to them and probably not even put the effort in to it, because they feel like, oh, it's over. I was a dancer. I lost half my leg. Can't dance anymore. That's too hard. I'll just give it all up. Didn't have to put that effort into that. You know what I'm saying? But in doing so, that's going to not only show other people that they can do it, but think about the legacy you're also leaving for your family and your grandchildren and them, that when they look back and they can say, you know what? I can do anything because my grandmother did that with this, So, yeah, mind over matter is so important. And that's why I was asking you that question, because I wanted you to lead into that, because I think it's so important that sometimes people see us and they don't understand sometimes the struggle that actors and artists sometimes that we have to go through, to get our art and to achieve that. How have you been this season with this COVID mess and all in the and the theater shutting down?
Like everybody, but I've been blessed with being able to do other things growing up, teaching voice or teaching tap or instructing on this or putting on a costume and going and reading to kids or working at COSI as an actress and whatnot. You find something. Okay, I've got this artistic thing in me. I need to do something now. What is possible and what can I do? I was blessed to do one evolution theater thing, the body politic, on Zoom, probably about March or April, right after we went into the COVID. We couldn't do it live, but we did the whole thing on Zoom. I worked heavily with Weathervane Playhouse because I was to be in season 2020. And of course, that was totally canceled. If it opens again in 2021, I will be there and on the stage, and very, very pleased and hope that happens for them. But they formed a lot of committees So I was on a play reading committee. I was on a playwriting. I wrote my first little skit that I, didn't think I could do. I wrote a poem for them to use for their advertising. Interview alumni, because I had been with Weathervane. I've probably done 20, 25 summers out there since the mid 90s. So I did that, but then I thought, well, I want to help them. So they've done a couple, every time we would have had an opening night, they did a video and they would show clips from past things, or they ask alumni to do certain things. And I thought, big give or whatever. I took the climb and I just recited. I was just dressed and holding a book and changed the lyrics to, this is COVID style, this is what we do. I mentioned their season, but it was all in rhyme and in rhythm to the music. And they used that to open their fundraising segment on one of those venues. So I was very pleased. There's just little things that I can still do, like the one you and I just finished with JB3. He said, "Can you do a little something here?" I said, "Sure."
I think it's so important that, we're theater families, and so even at this time when we can't get together in person, it's really a blessing that we can still at least get together this way, through Zoom, still get to see our theater friends and help out, like you said, and support the theater companies that we work with and have developed family relationships with. Miss Dawn, what was your favorite role out of everything you've done this whole 70 years? If you could do it one more time, what role would you do?
I would go out tomorrow and do On Golden Pond for the third time. I absolutely loved that show. Of course, at some day and age, I'd love to do Driving Miss Daisy and all those other older women roles. But yes, sometimes I repeat roles. It doesn't bother me a bit.
That's why I asked you about that, because there are just things like I would love to do Weezer again. I do Weezer anytime you ask me to do Weezer. And the Steel Magnolias, I'll do Weezer because she is
funny
just...
you should say that, because that's what I'm doing at Weathervane, but I'm doing Clary.
Are you going to be Weezer?
No, I'm Clary.
Are you going to be Clary? Honey, who's the Weezer? Tell them they're looking for a black Weezer. Don, you've been doing a lot of acting here in Central Ohio for quite a while now. Have you noticed, is there any change in the way we present the plays that are here? Do you see more diversity? Or do you see that it's still kind of standard that, the older things are always done the same way with the same cast of characters and no diversity? Or have you seen, because you've got 7 years of business here in Ohio, Central Ohio, have you seen any changes?
Yes. And I think I have realized that primarily for being on the Theatre Roundtable for so many years. I was on it for 15, 20 years, served as secretary for almost the entire time. But because of that, I knew a lot of directors, I knew a lot of theaters, and I followed and watched, and so diversified. I don't know what it is now, but I know at that time there were 32 theater companies in Central Ohio. And whereas I'm kind of old fashioned, I guess I still prefer to do the comfortable things because I know more people will come to see them. But as I mentioned, I've done a couple things for Evolution, and nobody would have ever thought I would have entered that venue at all. And I am such a Christian and tight-laced lady, I guess I should say, that something I did with Evolution 5-6 years ago asked for me as my character to say the F word, and I couldn't do it for 3 weeks. And they kept working on me, and I said, I can't do it. Well, finally realizing that it's not me, it's this character. And yes, I agree. It was an old woman in a nursing home that was fed up with stuff. But the joke at cast parties and everything else was, oh, here comes Dawn, change your language. And I said, I've grown up with this. I don't choose to do it, but it's not going to bother me in the least. So yes, I think theater is getting progressive. I have seen a lot of changing of roles and whatnot. And I've even done 2 male roles in my career as a female. So I think it just depends on the company. I think every theater company wants to have their own niche, their own label, the type things that they're to do. And of course, most people know I was with the now gone SRO, Senior Repertory of Ohio Theatre Company. And that was just heaven made for me because it was all of us old people. My friend Nancy, bless her heart, rest in peace, used to say, as we were growing up, because we were friends, we were in the same church, and she said, Dawn, when are you going to be old enough to join this group? You had to be 55. And so 3 weeks after I turned 55, she's on the phone. She says, we just had somebody pass away that was part of our touring show. Can you step in 3 weeks and do this? And that was their signature show of Once I Was Young, Now I'm Wonderful. And that probably in my whole theater experience was the one thing that I enjoyed the most. Yeah, it was just the whole company and what it stood for in the early years, at least. We did a lot of touring. We did the staples that us old people understood and knew.
Well, you're not old. Remember, you're wonderful. Okay.
That's right.
Before we end, I always ask my guests to give a word of encouragement to our audience members who might be thinking about what they're doing, and especially with your history, with everything that you've been through medically, and the changes you've seen that have come and gone with theater over these past 70 years. What word of encouragement do you have for anybody out there who wants to do this or wants to do anything in their life that they have a passion for, but have some sort of obstacle in their way that they feel will block them from moving from A to B?
As a youngster, that is hard. In fact, in my case, that's why my mother started me dancing. I was an extremely shy person. And I guess basically in life I am, but when I'm on stage, you will never know it. So if I hadn't tried it, I wouldn't know that I could do it and how comforting it was. For those that haven't dabbled in it yet, you must be creative in the background or in your mind, or you wouldn't even be considering wanting to do it. So what creative ways can you do something? Can you read stories to a younger child? Can you do a Zoom with somebody? Can you find a group where you can sing or dance if that's your talent? Can you go to your local community theater? Community theater is wonderful. And find out what they're doing. Tell them, maybe you don't have an experience, but I like to do this, that, and the other. Any theater that can use you as an upcoming and you don't have to have a proven ground or resume will easily take you in. Just do it.
Thank you, Miss Dawn, for those wonderful words of encouragement. And yes, ma'am, you are wonderful. And I know that my audience that are going to be watching this show are going to feel the same way I do. You're an inspiration to those of us out there who have medical challenges. You're an inspiration to those seniors of us out there who, as you say, probably don't know what to do, but think about all those things that you can do and that you've done your own self just this year with COVID, of all things. So I want to thank you so much. And I can't wait till I see you in person so we can get our theater hug. In the meantime,
likewise, my dear.
I'm throwing it your way right now. Give me my hug back. And I love you, Miss Dawn.
Thank you.